Okay, well, this has been fun, at least for me. This is the conclusion. This is the wrap-up. It might have been a little bit more coherent in class, but there wouldn't have been as many costume changes. Let's review, and then let's conclude. The relationship is about, at the beginning, finding real value. And remember, we defined value in class in symbolic terms in two ways. The words that have value for us, the symbolic meanings that have value for us, are those that are consistent and predictable. We know what we're going to get when we spend that currency, and that they are important to us. That the messages that we create, that the meanings we create are important to our lives, to the way we want our lives to be. So when we move beyond merely saying that the outcome of this message creates meaning for me, creates value to me, to the more adult realization that the creation of meaning at all, the mining of the ore that creates shared meaning, that allows us to not only find value, but to create value with somebody else over a long period of time and with multiple others. Remember, this us that you find yourself in can be just one of many foundational relationships that you have at the same time. That's an extremely important step for a human being to take. So, the process, obviously in any discrete model of communication, as we've already found out, and as you will find out through the rest of your education when you're talking about communication, the model is always neater than the actual process. The steps are always clearer than they are in life. There's no big stage from moving from one step to the next. You never know. There's a lot of crossover, and the model is always more specific and more concrete than life. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. We're not talking about how to live a life when we use these models. We're talking about how to examine phenomena from the outside. The models just give us questions to ask. They don't give us answers. So I took a couple of models and I squished them down into 5 parts. We have the meet phase, which is attraction. We have the entreat phase, which is getting past uncertainty and defining your own certainty. We have the complete phase, where you recognize for yourselves and essentially announce to the world that this is an us now, not a we. That this is a construction of its own that creates its own original meaning that's never existed in the world before, because this molecule is new. In the periodic table, I don't know, what is 120, 129, something like individual elements? Well, in the world, there are billions of different elements at any given time, and hundreds of generations of those billions of elements. So the number of molecules is inestimable. Every new us is new. Every new us is completely original and has the potential to create original things. That's what makes it worth the trouble. That's what makes it worth the risk. But now I've gone from educating to preaching, and I apologize for that. Listen, if there's one person you don't want to take relationship advice from, it's me. I am not a relationship counselor. I'm just a person who talks about talk. I will, however, answer the one question that's been driving you crazy ever since the beginning of this thing. What the hell does any of this have to do with mechanical cigarettes? Well, here's the this about that. Why do you use a mechanical cigarette? Why did somebody invent this? As I'm sure you know, we use mechanical cigarettes to wean ourselves from actual cigarettes. A mechanical cigarette is sort of a compromise version of an actual cigarette that steps you down over time from all the value that you think you're getting from the cigarette, which is actually trying to kill you. Well, Here's what this has to do with relationships. You use mechanical cigarettes deliberately to break a habit, a bad habit that you started deliberately. You smoked because at some point you decided to smoke. And if you're anybody who was born after 1950, you made the decision to smoke after you knew that it was a really stupid decision to make. So, you find yourself weighing the costs and benefits of smoking, and you decide to get off of it. But you can't, because smoking is such an important thing to you. I don't know if it's an actual addiction, but it might as well be. So what you do is, you take this robotic version of smoking, you take this skeletal version of the real thing, it gives you the touch, look, it even gives you the light and the smoke. It even, by the way, makes you a little queasy. And you try to use that. And when you get far enough from actual smoking with your pseudo-smoking that you can now just rely on this, you can look at this stupid thing, realize that you actually plug it into a computer to recharge it, and nip the whole thing in the bud. So what does this have to do with relationships? Well, let's compare smoking to other stuff. You can probably remember roughly when you decided to smoke. Can you remember when you decided to eat? Can you remember that when you decided to breathe? Can you remember when you decided that you really need to sleep at night and dream? See, the difference is that there are some things that you decide to do because you think they'll have value, and there are things that you naturally do because they naturally have value. And here's what that has to do with relationships. To the extent that you go out and try to create a relationship, to force attraction, you're going to end up smoking. The best relationships, the longest relationships, the more fundamental and foundational relationships are relationships not that you find for yourself, but that you find yourself in. You find yourself eating every day. You find yourself sleeping every night. And if you want to look for the relationships that are going to last, if you're going to look for the relationships that you're going to that have meaning in your life and that you can depend on forever, they're going to be the relationships for which the attraction was just that at the time that talk was good. And it kept being good, and you didn't think about it, and you didn't worry about it, and you didn't think about what stage you were in, and you didn't go to eHarmony, or you didn't go to some computer place and answer a bunch of questions to figure out who would be compatible with you. You look back and you realize that these relationships form themselves and formalize themselves all on their own. Those are the relationships that you should worry about. And you should not worry about the others, because the others